Peter Lawson-Jones was particularly good because he really spearheaded the actual negotiation over the last 10 months. And he probably talked to one of us at MMPI with the lawyers probably every other day or every day for probably a 6-month period. He brought the focus of a public official, but the training of a lawyer, and we appreciate all that he did. Mayor Jackson was great. There was this notion of the use of public money, and I think Mayor Jackson's involvement gave it a sense of legitimacy that there was another governmental entity reviewing our situation. The City Council, led by Marty Sweeney, which embraced the project and gave us, I think, a unanimous vote, helped reassure us that the public and the different governmental agencies would be on our side and helpful to the project as it moved forward. The Mayors and Managers Association not only forced us to provide focus to actually getting the job done, but made it clear to us that this needed to be a regional economic engine that served all of Northeast Ohio, so we appreciate them. And then there were a couple of public entities like the Greater Cleveland Partnership, which was the first group to host us in a public setting, let us explain the project for the first time to some of the business leaders here, and then their early endorsement of the project gave us encouragement that we should continue to work in Cleveland. Fred Nance really stepped up as the lawyer. He worked through a whole series of super complicated issues between us and the county, and taxes and bond issues and land use and zoning and permitting and lots of things that were in and of themselves, each one was super complicated, and he did a great job. I'd say Positively Cleveland has been very helpful in making sure that we kept the focus of the project broad, that there is great appeal for people to come to Cleveland, that is trade show managers, that much of that appeal came to an end when it was announced that the convention center would be rehabbed or a new one would be built, and trade show managers stopped wanting to come to Cleveland for fear of being caught in that turnover. And they've reassured us over and over again that there's plenty of demand for Cleveland, and we'll keep the scopes broad enough to include non-medical trade shows. And then Bajor Shah has been very helpful at BioEnterprise in terms of focusing on the medical industry and the great catalyst that this project can be for the biotech sector and some of the knowledge workers that we hope to attract and retain here. I think Cleveland is on the verge of converting its unassailable medical leadership, that is known all over the world as the center of great medicine, converting that into a hospitality-driven economy. I think you can create an enormous trade show business in this town, focused on those trade shows that are built around the medical community. And by doing that, you can attract to the town thousands, hundreds of thousands of people from other cities, from other countries, all over the world to Cleveland to spend their money here. And that money spent here will have an enormous rippling effect throughout the economy. It will help employ people in all walks of life, people who are looking for entry-level jobs, low-skilled workers who nevertheless want a living wage. We can help them, and we can help the richest and most powerful, too, the folks who own the hotels and own the hospitality infrastructure, and they will get a great boost. I think we can remake downtown, and I appreciate your all's incentive and leadership in doing all of that.
Well, thanks, Mr. Kennedy. My first question has to do with something that Commissioner Hagan, you alluded to a few minutes ago, which is the public skepticism that surrounded this project, really since it was rolled out a few years ago. And Mr. Kennedy, you had told the Plain Dealer that you were struck by how negative Cleveland and the media here in Cleveland are. I'm wondering from either of you, if you were rolling out this project again, what you would do differently.
Well, just because you read it in the Cleveland Plain Dealer doesn't mean I said it. No, I did not. I don't know what that quote is, but we ought to start there. I have not noticed any public skepticism. I am in Cleveland all the time. Mark is in Cleveland all the time. Dennis Madden is in Cleveland all the time. We've started to hire staff. Everywhere we go, whether we run into people in the airport, in the taxis, at restaurants, at events like this, everyone says the same thing. Thank you for bringing the Medical Mart to Cleveland. Thank you for sticking with it. Thank you for doing this. Don't give up. We don't hear skepticism. We don't hear controversy. I know that is reported, But if you look at the television coverage, if you look at the other papers, it's just not so. I mean, listen to the quotes of the during the introduction of this to this program. They are overwhelmingly positive, and that has to be the focus of our beliefs.
Commissioner Hagan.
That was in anticipation of my question.
Surely you've sensed some public skepticism about as this process has gone along. I think that what in particular the media and the plain dealer has focused on was the fact that the site selection process, by our estimate and their estimate, wasn't done as publicly as perhaps it could have been.
Thank you. I knew that was coming. Let me read the plain dealer yesterday about this bizarre attack on the Board of Commissioners for secrecy. In the article yesterday, the attorney, David Marburger, who often represents the plain dealer on issues involving open meetings and public records, said, Commissioners' use of executive sessions for discussion of the medical mart deal seems legitimate. I can see a lot of executive sessions in that because it's such a significant and complicated project, Marburger said. I certainly wouldn't draw any conclusions of persistently unlawful conduct. Now, I don't get an opportunity, and I'm not running for office again. But the business model for newspapers is clear. And the way to get people to read newspapers, putting aside the legitimate investigation of people in public life who may or may not have done something wrong, that's legitimate. But to turn the paper into a negative paper and attack people at every turn, including, quote, secret meetings, in which their own lawyer publicly has said that there's no violation of secret meetings because we have the right to go into executive session to discuss these matters. Now, no one can challenge the plain dealer because it's the last voice and they have the last word. They can write the last word. But I would suggest to the more sophisticated people in this town to ask yourself the question, why have they gone negative? Legitimately, in some areas, in investigations, I have no question about it. All of us in public life should be held accountable. But the paper has gone negative for one reason. People have quit reading the newspaper. And they don't have any other business model. So they've done it in Pittsburgh, they've done it in Minneapolis, and they're doing it here in Cleveland. Now, what I find offensive is somebody who has tried, in my public life, 30 years, trying to address issues in an honest way, to have a newspaper hell-bent on writing whatever they want. Now, I'm answering your question, Eric, and I'm not going to let you or the plain dealer determine how we should answer questions. The question is this. Yes, there were people who were concerned about this project. We answered those questions as best we could in a public forum. Yes, there's a tax. I've answered that question in a public forum on numerous occasions. If the plain dealer and others had covered those forums and heard our answers, there wouldn't be the kind of attitude that is perpetuated by people who shape a public opinion. And so I urge people to see this through, that legitimate debate, discussion, and questioning of those of us in public life is what a democracy is all about. But illegitimate attacks, unsubstantiated, are unacceptable, and somebody should challenge them. And I simply have put before the public a judgment that unsubstantiated attacks, when even their own lawyer says it was legitimate, is an indication of how they have stooped to a level that I think is not in keeping with a great journalistic newspaper.
Saturday's article aside, I really want to get at this issue of...
Sundays.
Was it Sunday? I apologize. Sunday's article aside.
Did you read it?
I did. And I had this crazy idea that it might be brought up at today's forum.
Yeah.